Are stabilization, hardening, release, Bob Galen sprints, whatever you want to call them, star sprints, are they agile? It's something that I encounter if anyone in here is doing agile sort of methods and applying agile methods. There's a lot of debate sometimes as to, what do you do in a sprint? And are these things legal? And I wanted to talk about a little bit. So some drivers for that. One of the things that really bugs me is they're looked at as sort of anti-patterns for Agile. And very often I sort of lurk at conversations in conferences or on mailing lists. And there's a lot of discussion around some of the challenges in testing in Agile methods. And some of the answers that come back are particularly not helpful. So here's a driver. We have low levels of automation and can't seem to get all of our testing done in our sprints. What can we do? And pundits and purists come back and will tighten your doneness criteria. This is an impediment, so just declare it as an impediment and move on. You must test everything within the sprint. Remember, potentially shippable product increment. Just leverage the DDs. Sometimes I think we're stuttering or something. There's the BDDs, the TDDs, the ATDDs, and things will just simply work out for you. And there's a grain of truth to all these answers, but there's also a grain of non-helpfulness for a lot of context, because there's a context here that someone is struggling. We don't have a lot of automation, so what do we do? Here's another driver, another example. When is the right time to do security, performance, and other non-functional testing within an Agile context? Very common. What do we do? Do we do it in the sprint? Do we wait? How do we handle that? Answer, and these are actual paraphrase, names protected, names obfuscated to protect the innocent. Early, often, every sprint, and I particularly like this, just figure it out. The team will figure it out, or just figure it out. It'll magically emerge from the sprint. Don't know if that always happens in all contexts. Some contexts, sure, but not in all contexts. Another one, we have a very expensive hardware platform in production and these are real world challenges at scale in a lot of Agile contexts. We can't replicate it for many forms of sprint testing across teams. What can we do? So there are monetary impediments, there are sharing impediments. These are real world impediments. Read my lips, the answer comes back. Test everything in the sprint. This is simply another impediment to overcome. Don't know how helpful that is. Sometimes, again, context-based. And then we have 15 Scrum teams sprinting on a single code line, and are having integration and dependency challenges, and see the above response. I think there's a genre of situations, of context, where hardening sprints can actually be very helpful. Here's some of the general drivers. Lack of extensive automation to begin with. Sure, you need to be automating over time, but what if you don't have that to begin with? There's regulatory drivers some domains can come into play. Integration challenges, levels of technical test debt, historical debt that come into play. This is the real world out there. This isn't always, a small team in a garage practicing Agile. You may have distributed teams, size, scale, scope comes into play. And I don't know if we're providing the right answers sometimes with test everything in the sprint. Here's just a picture of stabilization sprints. What you're trying to do is sort of beat down some technical debt every once in a while by stabilization. You're focusing on things that don't fit within the iteration of the sprint, perhaps a full regression test or production promotion steps. Consider stabilization, and again, stabilization, release, hardening, Galen-esque, whatever you want to call. They're sort of not pure, they're not where you want to be permanently, but they're useful. They're a content pressure release mechanism. You want to use them when you have many sprints running in parallel. Don't be embarrassed, often for non-functional. Generally to beat down your technical test debt. A lot of times these answers, we're almost talking down to folks. We're embarrassing them. Well, you're not Agile if you can't handle this challenge and do it within an iterative basis. Well, then you're not Agile enough, and we sort of shush folks away. I think we can be Agile in these contexts, and we need to be more context literate in an Agile space. Danger, Will Robinson. I'm not saying that this is the leanest thing in the world. It's not pure Scrum or pure Agile. Your mileage is going to vary on your context. So in many cases, don't do it. I'm not suggesting it's a panacea, but in many cases, there is an incremental way. There are evolutionary ways to be Agile and to get tremendous business value. And I think this is one of those techniques. And then you want to continuously, if you do apply them, you want to be fervently reducing them and continuously reducing them over time. I want to thank you for the time.